Hey y'all, welcome back. Hope you're all well. Welcome to the channel again. Good to see you. Today on my bench I have something unique. This was a viewer submitted unit. It's brought to me. Something I don't see enough of, or have seen enough of in my life, but this is a Nakamichi CR2A. It's a CR2 model. The A stands for the Americas, and then I guess they have an E model which is more geared up for the European market, but basically it's a CR2, and he brought it to me. He wants total rehab. He says it needs a lot of work. He wants to have new belts fitted and anything else it needs, and if it needs new caps. I kind of doubt it would need new caps. It's really not that vintage yet to have bad capacitors in it, but we'll go through and we'll check everything and we'll make sure it's all 100% before we give it back to him. Yeah, it's a very nice unit. I've always lusted over these Nakamichis when I was younger, but I've never had the opportunity of owning one. I did have a Harman Kardon cassette deck when I was younger. It was a HK 1500, and it served me well for many years, and I sold it to my brother's friend, and I think he still has it. I'm not sure. Maybe it gave up on him, I don't know. But this one's pretty well decked out. It's got lots of features. It's got a bias trim, different Dolby B and C. Let's see what else it has here. It's got some functionality with the timer and memory stop, auto repeat. Some nice features. So it's let's pull the lid off. Oh, actually, let's look at the back first, and then we'll see. Pretty sparse. It's got input output, and the system remote is a DIN, a proprietary DIN plug. So alright, so I have the cover. Let's remove the cover, have a look inside. And I will admit I was in here already because I removed the belt to measure it up so I could order a new one. So basically what I did is I took the lid off, removed the motor, and removed the belt, and ordered, like I said, I ordered a new one. So I got one down here. So we're going to put that in. Just want to have a nice look at this. Just want to have a look at this. It's really nicely laid out. It's got a lot of stuff going on here. It's got a huge audio board, a lot of processing going on. Power supply section here, and this is the system control here. Nice shielded power transformer. Attention to detail there. That's good. It's mounted away from the drive unit. It's got a little board here with 3 fuses. I don't know what cassette deck needs 3 fuses, but this one does. So we're going to go through and check things out. Like I said, I ordered a belt for this. We're going to put it in and try it out. I also had a little peek at the heads. Let's see if we can get a better look here. And they look a little dirty. Quite a bit dirty, actually. I don't know if you can see any of that, but those heads need a good cleaning. And we'll go through and make sure everything else is good. That pinch roller looks pretty glazed, but I think it's just coated with oxides and dirt. So one thing I did notice when I turned it on, let's see if you can hear this. Did you hear that motor? Sure makes a lot of noise. I think that motor is really tired. It shouldn't make any noise like that. So I'm probably going to end up removing that motor and giving it a full service too. It doesn't feel like it's got any bad spots to it, but it might have a dirty bearing, or it's really noisy. So just for the sake of testing, I put the old belt back on and I reattached the motor, and I just want to go through and test functions here just to see what's working, what's not working. And Let's see how this goes. And for our listening pleasure today, I have Van Halen's 1988 release of OU812. So let's try and not get a copyright on that one as well. So put the tape in, hit play. And we have nothing happening. The transport's not loading. The Capstan motor is running. It runs for about 1.5 seconds and then shuts off. But we have no mechanism loading here at all. Let's take this tape out and try this again. Hit play. Let's try fast forward. Rewind. And we're getting a whole lot of nothing here. Let's reset it. Oh, it tried to come up, but it didn't quite make it. It's like it's jammed, maybe? Rewind. Fast forward. Fast forward's not working. Okay, let's try this one more time. No, something wrong with the mechanism. It's not. It's not loading. So there is another motor down in the bottom, a loading motor, and it has a worm gear, and that works on another gear, which influences a number of contact switches. And maybe we have a dirty switch down there, or something's fallen inside and jammed. So here's a closer look at the mechanism. Here we got our reel motors, one reel motor. This is our Capstan motor, and this is our loading motor down below here. And you can see there's a little, well, you can't see the worm gear, but there is another gear that's there. I'll try hitting the play button. You can see it moves just a little bit, and then it gives up. I'm assuming that's a worm gear in there. That might be a belt action, but I don't think so. No, it is a worm gear, so I don't know what's holding it. I'm going to have to pull up the tape drive and give it a good looking. So I removed the bottom panel. It gives you full access to all the printed circuit board, which is really nice. I'll have to go through and check and look for the cracked solders. I just want to give you a good look here. You get a better look at what's going on here with the drive loading mechanism. You can see the motor down there with its worm gear. I'll try and get a good shot, and then I'll activate it right about there, I think, and then I'll hit the button. You can see it just doesn't have any jam to pull that cam gear fully around to load the cassette mechanism. So that's why I think there might be something jammed in there. Maybe a piece of some foreign object, or maybe that motor's kaput. I don't know yet. We'll have to find out. I hope it's not the motor. But it seems like it kind of wants to. I do have the machine sitting upside down, so anything that was in there should fall out. Oh, it's almost got it. I just keep trying it. There it goes. It finally went through. Shut it down. Now it's working. So maybe what it was fell out. Let me take a look at the other side. Yeah, it's definitely messed up. It does not want to work. Maybe 25% of the time it works. Let's try it here. If I keep trying enough times, it kicks in. Fast forward. I'm wondering if that motor is. There we go. Could be dried up grease, but I kind of highly doubt that. I won't know that until I open it up and have a look inside if it's dried up grease. And now it does this. It kind of does a little freak out thing. It goes into pause mode and then it gives up. I'll shut the power off and reset it. Yeah. Like I said, I'll pull out the tape drive and we'll have a good look at everything that's going on in here. Alright, tape drive's removed from the chassis. There's 3 screws, 2 in the bottom and 1 on the top. And then the whole thing comes out as a unit. You just got to disconnect the wiring and yeah, it's pretty simple. Here's how many connectors here. 1, 2, 3. This is a race head, playback record head. This is the lamp for the viewing window, and then we got system control here, 2 connectors. So let's have a look. This is moving quite freely. Let's remove this cassette door. Oops, what the hell happened there? I guess I pulled on it and it came out. Okay. Let's remove this cassette door. I think I just need to remove 2 screws here from this side. And this one as well from the cover plate. And it should just lift out. Okay, there we go. Now we can look at this. Okay, I'll remove this other screw. And this is the LED that lights up the window. And now we're down to the... I don't see anything going on here. There's nothing binding. The grease doesn't look dried up or at all. It looks like everything's working good. So why isn't it loading? Is it that motor? Let's remove this. We have to remove this anyway, so I might as well take this out. Okay. I snipped a lot of the zip ties already, just to speed up things here. Alright, okay, we got 3 wires on the motor. Orange and 2 oranges and 1 green. So I think I'm going to just disconnect these wires here. So the green wire is our negative. And the 2 orange wires are positive. This is out. And the belt is out. Is it hooked on? Belt's not bad. But he wanted it changed anyways. I bought him a new belt. So we're going to put a new one in. But this one doesn't seem like it's too bad yet. He could probably still use it. All right. More zip ties. I'm wondering if maybe one of these switches here is dirty. The contacts. Maybe it's not sending the right signals back to the microcontroller. Another thing I'm wondering is if this motor's pooched. Let's pull. Everything looks like it's working good. That's working normally. Let's pull this motor out and test it. How do I do that? I guess it doesn't matter. I just need to pull. Okay, cut this. It's only mounted with one screw. How is that mounted? One screw. And this screw. That's for the shaft of the cam assembly. Okay, so I have to get that off. So first I gotta remove this screw. This is covering. And there's a ball bearing here to be aware of. And the ball bearing, we'll keep that separate so it doesn't get lost. Now we can remove this screw. Alright, so I should be able to pull this whole thing out now as an assembly. Okay. What I'm going to do is apply power to this motor, and we're going to spin that camshaft. We're going to see how much torque it has. Alright, so I got 5 volts here. If I look on the motor, there's a positive and a negative, so I'm going to connect the negative to negative. Positive. Drawing about 40-50 milliamps. I think maybe the grease on this shaft. I don't know. It's having troubles. It speeds up and then it slows down. 40 milliamps. If I stall the motor, it climbs up to over 150 milliamps. I think this motor is defective. It's running at weird speeds. See? Struggling. And it speeds up. Okay, so let's pull this cam off. It seems dry. I don't think it's a lubrication problem. It just seems like it's a motor problem. It seems both motors are having troubles. Okay. So brown is positive. And white is negative. I'll take these off. Let's separate it. Alright, it's not necessary that I take off the magnetic shielding, but I can. Basically what we got to do is pull this gear off, and remember that the shoulder goes towards the motor itself, and we have probably 2 millimeters of space between the bearing and the gear, so we can there we go. So I want to make sure we don't crack that gear. Okay. Now what we need to do is lift 2 tangs. Holding the back cover on. And that should be good. Make sure they're pushed back far enough. Okay. Then we can just push out the entire assembly. And pay attention if there's any washers on the shaft that have come off and fallen inside, and it looks like everything's clean in there, so it's good. But I think it just needs a relubrication, to be honest. I don't see anything wrong with it. Brushes are good, the commutator's good. Again, keep an eye out for bearing washers. So this copper sleeve here is the commutator. It's got 3 sections to it, and it goes to 3 windings. And this disc here underneath it is actually a capacitor. It's like a disc capacitor that they put on there, and that just kind of suppresses the transient noises that come off from the brushes, the sparking. I don't see anything going on here. I'm just going to re-lubricate and reassemble. Contact cleaner on a Q-tip. I'm just going to clean the get rid of the dirt. And then clean the brushes as well. A little bit dirty. And then re-lubricate. Now this is the tricky part. I wish I had 3 hands. You want to put the main thing is you don't want to bend these brushes. These thin copper plates they're flexible, but they're also very bendy too. So you want to push back the brushes just enough to get that in. There we go. Now, lubricate the shaft down at the bottom, so that when I put the case back on, we don't have there we go. Okay, let's test this. Before I close it up, I'll test it. It's running at 1 speed. Okay, one thing I forgot to mention is if you put this on backwards, like I mean rotated 180 degrees out of phase the way you took it off, the motor will run backwards. So I got positive, negative, and if I touch the power to it, it's actually running backwards. So what you can do is just pop the back cap off, rotate it 180 degrees, and push it back in. And that will keep the motor running the correct direction. Actually, what I should have done is I should have marked it before I took it apart. I know, my mistake. I was a little anxious to get in here and fix it, but now it's going the right direction. If you can see that, it's pulling the gear, the worm gear is pulling towards itself instead of pushing away. So I'll push these down, and it's just a matter of taking a screwdriver and folding these tangs back down. To hold that end plate in position. And then we'll solder the wires back on and put it back together. Okay. Now this thing here, I don't think it had any grease on it whatsoever. So I'm going to add some grease. I don't think it really matters. The worm gear itself will provide enough torque to spin it. It seems like it was lacking torque. Let's put this back together here. Actually, let's install the motor first. Because if I put the gear on, I can't access the screws. So let's put the motor on. Can't get my big fat fingers in these tiny screws. And of course it doesn't want to cooperate. Alright, now this can go on. I'll try it one more time. Seems to be working pretty good. I'll add some grease to the worm gear. I think we can put this back in. It's drawing 40 milliamps and it wasn't speeding up and slowing down like it was before. Seems to be working consistently. Alright, so I'm going to give these switches a quick clean. I don't think this is the problem that, or this is contributing to the problem that we're experiencing, but I'm just going to give them a clean anyways, because if this tape deck sat for any number of years, these switches could have corroded and maybe they're having a poor connection or something. So I'm just going to remove them from the block here. And pay attention to how this is wired, because if you flex this too many times, these wires break off. So you got black wires along the bottom here, and they're all tied together with a bus wire. So all the blacks tie on the bottom here, and then you got purple, yellow, and gray. But what we're going to do is we're going to take, I got a piece of a paper envelope. This is 2 layers of paper, maybe 3. And I'm just going to slide it up inside here. And I'm going to use contact cleaner. You can use anything that's non-residue. And just soak the paper and squeeze the contacts together and just drag the paper back and forth a few times. You can see there's a little bit of black there. And this cleans up the, it kind of polishes and removes any oxides. You don't want to bend these copper leaves. You can see, oh, you can't really see it, they weren't that bad. But it cleans them up, so then you put it back together. Okay, I'm going to reassemble this. I don't think you need to watch. I'll put this all back onto the tape drive mechanism, and then we'll move on to something else here. One thing I want to do before I reassemble everything and put the new belts on is I need to remove the capstan. This thing here, there's 3 screws. One's removed already because I removed that leaf. But I want to lubricate these bearings because I don't think that is as low as friction as it should be. It seems to have a little drag to it. So let's just remove this and clean it. It'll take us long, just a few minutes. And then we'll move on to cleaning of the heads. Alright, so the capstan's out. And it does feel stiff. So we have a dirty capstan here. We need to clean this before we drag the bearings across the shaft. And there is a plastic washer here that kind of locks the capstan onto the bearings. And then we should clean the outside surface of where the belt rides too. So we should do that as well. Let's do that right now. Just using alcohol here. Seems like it's got scratches on it for some reason, maybe. I don't know why it would be scratched from the belt. It's really not that dirty. Seems okay. Let's see how dirty the shaft is. Okay, I think we're good. Should be able to pull this off. And remove our bearing. The dirt. Yeah, this definitely needs a relube. Look at this. It's all like black. It's dirty here. And we'll have to spray some cleaner through these bushings. There's a black washer here you got to pay attention to. You don't want to lose that. Clean this up as well. It's very thin. And we'll clean up these bearings here. So for this you want to use some kind of cleaner that's spray cleaner. Even a brake cleaner would work. Something that's going to dissolve the grease or the oils. So let's give this a shot. We're going to spray it with the straw. We're going to spray it through onto a clean piece of this stuff. Might not work because it doesn't have. Let's see how that looks. Look at the junk that came out from the back end. You know what, I'm going to follow it up with this stuff. This stuff's very light and volatile. What is in this stuff? Doesn't say. It's pretty old. I'll get a straw for this. Let's try this. Something happened to the valve of my can. Oh well, that's the end of that. I got some more junk out. I don't have anything that's small enough to go in there. This old grease. Okay, I think that's good. All right. I still need to clean this. So it does show a bit of wear here, and I don't think the lubrication was any good anymore because it was shouldn't be worn like that. So let's just reassemble this. There's spring. Put some lube. We got our washer. Put a little bit more lube. Now we need to lubricate the bottom bearing. And then we need to, how are we going to lubricate the top bearing? Lubricate the top bearing. That's much better. That's how it should be. Okay. Put our locking washer on. It's much better. Okay, I got the flywheel and capstan reinstalled. This little spring leaf gets hooked under that post, and the ball bearing needs to be in place. Put a little drop of lube on there and tighten the screws down. This flywheel now spins a lot better. It's a lot lower friction, a lot less drag, and that equates to a lower wow and flutter, which is what we want, right? We want to have the lowest friction possible on this bearing. Okay, now I'm just going to clean the heads while I'm here because they're pretty filthy, and I got full access, so I'm going to do that right now with some alcohol on a cotton swab. And you can see they're quite dirty. The erase head. dry them off so there's no residue when it dries. Give it a good scrub. And dry it off. I'll give it an inspection here. Seems okay. Sometimes you gotta have a real good look at it because there's pieces on there that won't come off at all. Give the capstan a little clean because we had grease on it. Then we got to give this a scrub too, a pinch roller. This is the dirtiest part. All right, let's do something with this motor. I don't think it's, can you hear that? Makes an awful noise. I'll put 6 volts to this and I'll show you what it sounds like. Makes an awful growling noise. So we're going to open it up and relubricate it, and the speed control is here. First we need to pull off the pulley. And a good way to do that is just a little bit of upward leverage. It pops off. Now we can pop the back off. Let's see here. This printed circuit board that's sticking out is very, very brittle. You don't want to put any pressure on it, otherwise it'll snap off. So let's see here. We got a pair of nippers. And just open this up a little bit and do a little bit of upward pressure on this. There we go. I think it's, you can get a little bit on this side. And don't push down on that. There we go. The foam insulation off. We should be able to push this whole assembly out. Okay. We can now disconnect the motor from the PCB board. I need to use some solder wick. Hang on. Where's my solder wick? And there's our little motor control circuit, or speed control circuit. Sometimes these electrolytic capacitors go bad in here. Not very often. But we usually, I just want to check this one. This is about an ohm ESR, and it should be, yeah, the capacitor is good. So I'll clean this up and then get ready for reassembly. And now we have our bearing motor. Quite a bit of slop in there. So that's by design. Okay, so these motors are never designed to be serviced or opened, but you still need to get into them to relubricate them, because there's no way to relubricate the back bearing or clean the commutator or the brushes. So my plan here is to open this up. Now they staked 6 places, they peened it over the sides over onto the back plate, and just prying. I could force it with a screwdriver, pry it up, but then I risk bending this back plate, which I don't really want to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a Dremel, and I have a Dremel with this cutoff disc, and I'm just going to go through and turn this on. Look at how bent my mandrel is. It's disgusting. I'm just going to go through. Before I do that, I want to cover up these holes with some tape, just to keep the grit and the dust out of the motor itself, because we don't want that. It's highly abrasive, and we don't want that into the motor. So I'll put that there, and we're just going to really lightly just nick these where it's burred over. I'm just going to nick them and then clean it up. Just to the point where it sets it free. And my blade is rotating away from the motor so that all the junk goes down on the paper here, paper towel. Okay, now you can see there's magnetic stuff sticking to the back here already. So I'm just going to clean all this off. And we should be able to pry that up now. I hope I got them deep enough. You don't want to go too deep because you don't want to cut a hole. So let's get rid of, okay, let's pry this up and see if it pops off now. Yeah, there it goes. It's going nice and easy now. Don't pry it right off because you'll rip the brushes off the commutator. You just want to pry it up free from the case. Just a very slight amount. Seems like this one's holding, but I'm going to try pushing with the shaft. I'm going to try pushing the whole guts out. There we go. One thing you're going to want to do before you separate the back plate from the housing is you're going to want to mark it. And the best way to mark it is with a scratch. You just take a screwdriver, put an arrow, and then you have those 2 alignment marks to line it back up. So then you push this out. You can need a little help. Something skinny just to get it past the magnets, and then we can put this aside. Don't let any magnetic junk get caught inside here, because then you'll have a hard time getting it out. Just put that aside for now, and we just want to look at the rest of this. Everything looks good, so we can take this apart You gotta push the brushes back a little and just slightly pull on it at the same time, just to disconnect the just slightly pull on it and push the brushes back a little, just to get it so they don't get torn off. There we go. And we're free. Okay, we can clean this now. We can clean the commutator, the brushes, and then re-lubricate. So for cleaning, I'm just going to use contact cleaner. Just soak a Q-tip and just get in there and give it a wipe. It looks like everything's silver plated in here. Usually it's copper, but looks like in this case I use silver plating. And then just get in here and clean the brushes. Very careful, don't bend the fingers. And we're done. That's all you can do to it. And then we're going to deposit a drop of lubricant. Don't get it on the brushes, obviously, so press these apart. A little bit more just for good luck. Okay. Let's have a look at this. Pretty sure these bearings were dry. My solution is just use a very high quality synthetic grease. It's a low viscosity grease that works pretty good on small bearings like this. So I'm just going to try forcing this back in without using anything to pry the brushes back. I'm just going to try just like this. There we go. And we're good. Okay, now lubricate the other bearing on the shaft here. Let's clean this off better. Grab our sometimes they have washers in here. I don't see any washers on this one. So the trick is you want to put this together, but you don't want the magnet to suck the armature off the back plate. So you kind of have to hold it. Even if you had something to push here, and then if you put the tip of the shaft on the tip of the screwdriver, it prevents it from getting sucked in, and then you can control sliding the cover over the armature without having it getting ripped off of the brushes. Okay, so let's line our marks right here and snap it back together. Now we got to line up our tangs. There. There we go. Alright, so one thing you want to do before you actually reassemble this motor is I just pushed the back plate on. We're going to test it with some voltage. I got 6 volts on the power supply. And it's running nice and smooth, nice and quiet. Try it both directions. It's working good. Okay, now we can stake it and close this motor up. It's pressed, the plate's pressed down all the way, our marks are aligned. Let me get a vise as a surface to hold the shell. And I'm going to use a hammer and a chisel. So what we're going to do is we're just going to lightly tap a few spots just to stake it. Let's see here, let's go here. And let's put one over here. And I don't think we need to do 6, I can just do 4. That one's a little bit more on that one. Let's do one over here. If you ever need to take this motor apart again, we can just grind out those stakes again. There's 4 of them. All right. Now we can put this back together. And what we need to do first is we need our insulating sheet. And then our circuit board. Let me straighten these pins up. Okay, now we can reassemble. Snap our back cover on, and then we can went up this way. Snap our back cover on, then I can put this back in the machine. Alright, so our motor's back together. For a belt. This one actually, like I said, it's not bad. I don't think it would, but this one measured out 7 inches, or 17, or just about 17.7 centimeters. So I did order a 7-inch belt. Let's see how this one measures up. It's quite a bit thicker. 7. So I'm going to assemble with this new belt. Should be okay. Let's put this all back together, and then we'll give her a test. See how it's going to go. I have a feeling it's going to work pretty good. A lot better than what it was. Alright, so we're back together. Time for doing a little test. I got it plugged into the amplifier. Put tape in. Power. Seems to be working normally. Fast forward's working. Rewind. Play loads right immediately. Okay, so what we need to do now is start on the electronics. I think don't know if this tape is any good. We're getting Dolby B. HX Pro. What is the front panel say? It's only got B and C. Oh, here we go. Okay, so I'm going to get started on the electronics. I want to do some checks and capacitors in here and make sure everything's good. I got a few spots where I have circuit glue that's gooped around some components here, and clean that out. I'm going to check some of these power semiconductors to make sure there's no cracks on the solder joints, and go through and just give it a general once over and make sure everything's 100%. Okay, so I went through the electronics, and you remember when I said I doubt I'd find any bad capacitors? Well, boy, was I wrong. Yeah, I went through and checked a lot of these capacitors, and I found quite a few of them actually were degraded to the point where I changed them. 10 of them, in fact. Some of the bigger ones in the power supply, and there's some other ones throughout the circuits. So I went through and checked all of these, and replaced any that were bad. Like I said, 10 of them altogether, so that should fix up any problems that there was. Even though it was behaving properly with those bad capacitors in there, they were just on the point of failing, and not bad enough to upset the operation of this deck. So now that I have it back together, I think it's time to do a speed calibration. I got my speed tape loaded, and I got it hooked up to my scope, and I'm going to use my scope as a counter. And we're going to, the tape has recorded on it a 3 kilohertz signal, and we're going to use that to set up the speed. So let's get the camera set up for this. So I don't know if you can see in the top right hand corner there, right here, this is my frequency counter, and right now it's just measuring noise on the baseline. And it says less than 5 kilohertz. Let's pump in a signal. Put the 3 kilohertz signal on there. And what is it reading? It's reading 3.216 kilohertz. That's roughly, if I do the math in my head quick, it's probably about 6% out, 6% fast. So let's get a screwdriver in here and adjust this. Let's see if I can find a little screwdriver. Just bear with me. If I can get the screwdriver in here. Okay. Turning it, slowing it down, speeding it up. And let's turn this down to 3 kilohertz. 2.992. We can get a little closer than that. Three point zero zero, 2.0195. It's a pretty touchy adjustment, and I expect it'll probably drift a bit. So I'm going to watch this tape here. I'll try and get a little closer. 3.01. Let's see if we can get it a little better than that. I expected the tape speed to be out of alignment. Once you go in and relubricate motors and change belts. It usually upsets the tape speed. So I think we're good there. We're at 2.998 from what I can see. And I'm going to let that run for a while and let this machine warm up. See how much that changes. Seems like we got a nice stable, steady signal coming out of the tape head. Alright, so that pretty much wraps up the repair for this one. One thing I want to do is I want to do some test recordings of test tones. I want to see some frequency response, but I won't bore everybody to death with that. What I'll do is I'll get the signal generator going, and I'll get a tape out, and we'll put this thing through its paces, see how it sounds. Should be okay. I think it's all back to normal, and from there I'll just get it back to the customer. And it was nice to work on. It was quite a bit of a few things wrong with it. Like we said, we had a bad loading motor, or the loading motor wasn't behaving properly. It had two different speeds to it, and it didn't seem to have enough jam to load the tape transport mechanism. And then we went in and we serviced the main Capstan motor and made adjustments for that, cleaned everything else up, and it's ready to go. Like I said, I'm going to make some test tapes and then we'll get it back. So anyways, that's it for this one. Just want to say thanks again for watching, and take care. See you on the next one.